Welcome to Creating Calm Parenting with Mind, Body, and Spirit. I am Corinne Cayce, your co-host. I am a mother, a lifelong student of the A.R.E Cayce readings, and an integral leadership coach. And I am here with my friend and co-host, Arlene.
Hi, Corinne. Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Arlene Dijamco. I'm an integrative physician, a pediatrician, and a cranial osteopath, and I have 4 girls of my own. And today we are going to talk about something that keeps us from living to our full potential, that keeps us from flowing with the ease of life, and that is fear, because fear is such a major obstacle and influences our lives in so many ways. So we're going to unpack that and the various faces of fear, what to do when things feel like they're falling apart, and go through some exercises to help address that for ourselves. And also, Corinne will also share some stories from her grandfather as well. So as we get to that, Corinne's going to lead us through our opening meditation.
Yes, thanks so much, Arlene. So let's take a moment just to come into our bodies and slow down for just a second. If you can close your eyes, you're welcome to, or you can just let your attention turn inward. And begin by bringing your attention to your feet and feel yourself connected to the ground and to the earth. And really, in your mind's eye, see the earth beneath your feet. Feel yourself connected. See the earth stretching out in all directions from where you are, making this great wide circle that we're on. And feel yourself held so securely there. And let your attention slowly travel up through your body, up through your legs, your torso, the softness of your belly, the strength of your spine, your shoulders and your arms, your neck, your head, and face. And let yourself bring your attention to your breath for just a moment. And let yourself touch into the truth that this breathing, this quiet breath that's always happening right there beneath everything else that's happening. Your breath is so solid and constant, always right there with you and available to you as a support to help you slow down and connect to the present moment. And as you feel yourself breathing, relate to that breath as a friend. Feel the feelings in your heart of when you're greeting a dear friend. Feeling safe and seen. And feel that way about your breath. All right, thank you so much. So we'll begin, as we always do, with an excerpt from the A.R.E Cayce readings to sort of frame and ground our conversation. And today, Arlene and I have picked a couple of A.R.E Cayce reading excerpts, as well as some words from Brene Brown, who has done such amazing research and work and sharing with us on vulnerability and fear and these sorts of things. So to begin with, we'll start with some brief excerpts. This first one comes from reading 2574-1, and it says, "One only limits self by doubt and fear." One only limits self by doubt and fear. And this next one comes from reading 2560-1, and it says, "Fear is that element in the character and in the experience of individuals which brings about more of trouble than any other influence in the experience of an entity." And from Brene Brown, we have, "Our willingness to own and engage with our vulnerability determines the depth of our courage and the clarity of our purpose. The level to which we protect ourselves from being vulnerable is a measure of our fear and defeat. And that comes from Brené Brown. So, Arlene, let's start off with talking about sort of the mind-body connection as it relates to fear and what the readings have to say about that and all that we know about science and medicine as well. How does that sound?
Sounds good, because there's this interrelationship. Of course, we all know this triune nature, the body, the mind, and spirit. And but it goes all ways. So there can be things that affect the body that create fear in us. That's whether it's from an accident, say like a car accident that kind of takes your breath away, a fall or injury. But it can be things that we aren't even aware of, because there's a whole life of physical things that have happened to us and we've experienced. And there's this one A.R.E. Cayce quote that says, "The sources or causes of the glandular reactions in the lacteals, which are in the intestines, are from a pressure produced there during those periods when there was the care for the umbilical cord or center by too great a pressure and a cold or congestion that once caused some inflammation during those first 10 to 15 days of the body physical development." And that was from reading 2441-1. And as an osteopath, that is so interesting to me, because your umbilicus, your belly button there, I mean, this isn't a little baby. And so who knows what had happened, but it just got pulled in one way or the other. And that kind of pressure, that tension can get transmitted from that belly button area to the different ligaments that it's connected to in the body, and put pressure on different parts of the system. So in this reading, it was like in the glandular reactions, the lacteals, and that was creating some sort of fear. And I mean, that's so interesting, because there was something from the get-go. And sometimes I'll hear parents describe their kids as like, they're always really tense, or their body's just like really like bunched up, and they can never relax. Oh, they've always been like that ever since they were a baby. And that kind of tension, it's not our natural state, like if everything was relaxed and balanced, but I think look at that as a stress response, and a stress response is that kind of fear response, that fight or flight. So there's a fear there, and that can translate into the mental forces. So how you think and how it's your lens that you're seeing things through. So if you're seeing things through a stress or a fright, then your perspective is changed. It's you're looking through the glass of that. And so this can affect like how you make decisions. It can actually make it more difficult to make decisions, because it takes effort to decide what to do. And you can start to doubt yourself or be unsure. So you feel like you don't have as much confidence. And when we're faced with difficult situations, that can trigger more fear within, because we don't feel settled in general. And then the difficulty and that unknown of like what to do, you're facing something you've never faced before. There's some challenges or some interpersonal difficulties. And so you can start to have feel like you're having a really hard time knowing what steps to take. That's the indecision. So fear, indecision, and doubt really go hand in hand. And the readings talk about that. It takes energy to make decisions. And so when we're faced with challenges, we're actually being asked to make many decisions quickly, or we're really being asked to make moment-to-moment decisions, if we break it down like that and make it sound less scary. But in order to do that, we really need to ground and center ourselves, because otherwise we're making fear-based decisions. And if fear is the influence that creates the most trouble, then we need to address the fear. And for me, it's not eliminating fear completely, because as human beings, that's very difficult to do. We have our egos that are there to protect us, and they create fear. So for me, that feels like not being afraid of my fear. And this is part of why we're having this conversation, so that we can normalize having these difficult conversations and to talk about something that has a major influence on our lives, which is fear, and to be able to see how we can address that in a very gentle way so that we can make decisions that are more grounded and centered, that are love-based instead of fear-based.
Mm-hmm. So there's this initial step of recognizing when we are feeling afraid, when there is anxiety or stress or worry that's going on. And from the perspective of the Edgar Cayce readings, and now so much of science as well, is kind of being curious and acknowledging that there's a physical reason mm-hmm. that could be impacting the level of fear and anxiety that we feel consciously or unconsciously, like that quote from the readings where it could happen when you're such a small baby, and so you not consciously remember it, but that the physical impacts on the body, ways that there are things that are compacted, or that impacts our capacity to feel grounded, confident, and clear, and may exacerbate feelings of fear that we feel in our lives. So at a physical level of our own bodies, that can be mm-hmm. true. It can also be true at a genetic or cellular level mm-hmm. in terms of what gets passed down through us through, all the study of epigenetics now, in terms of what DNA, what parts of ourselves get activated through fear and trauma that comes down through our ancestral family lineage, mm-hmm. culturally, and a bigger. So just kind of acknowledging the physical aspect of fear and how it can feel often. I think fear can feel like it is only a mind issue that's going on. Like, oh, if I just come at this from a mental level, I'll be able to cure it. And there's this widening, softening, and opening that can happen as we kind of recognize the physical aspect of what may be going on that's impacting the mental, and also the mind aspect that can be impacting the physical mm-hmm. as well. So when the strength of the fear and anxiety and worry patterns that are going on, that can impact our physical experience of being in our bodies, in terms of getting indigestion or feeling sick or feeling like we can't sleep, or all these things that we talk about very often on this podcast, because it impacts our children so much as well, of just kind of and the triune of bringing the spiritual into it, as well as Arlene said, of just that these things are moving not just in a one-way circle, but that they're moving both ways all the time, and that there's an initial step in working with fear of just kind of recognizing that, and in that recognition in and of itself is an initial slowing down. Mm-hmm. And that's really what we want to do, is give ourselves permission to kind of pause, step back, and look at what's going on in terms of why we're feeling what we're feeling, and not rushing to make decisions or take action or feel like something needs to be fixed, without allowing ourselves to have a mm-hmm. moment to pause and ground. And there are lots of things that are suggested in the readings. Mm-hmm. And my grandfather, Hugh Lynn Cayce, wrote a book called Faces of Fear, where it's a beautiful job of kind of organizing and separating out all the different ways that the Edgar Cayce readings talk about the causes of fear and where it might be coming from and how we can work with it and do all of that. So some of the things, maybe we can talk, Arlene, about mm-hmm. some of the things that are mentioned in the readings for helping to work with fear. Yeah.
Yeah. And starting from the physical, Edgar Cayce often recommended massages, salt baths, castor oil, and going to see an osteopath to address some of that tension in the body. So those are just starting from the physical. So, but like we were talking about, it's the body affecting the mind, but then the mind can also affect the body. And so there's a quote that says, if there are the worries and aggravations, these worries and aggravations will reflect in the functioning of the organs of the central nerve and blood supply, as well as in the sympathetic. And so that's from reading 338-9. And so you start to see that interplay. It's there can be the physical influences, and then there's the mind influences, but they're both, the body and mind are influencing each other. And what you're talking about, that epigenetics and the priming from your parents and generations before, but even thinking of that blood flow from the mom to the baby. So you get these influences primed from birth, even early on, and then you have so many other years of influences, but they start to interplay with each other. So Cayce recommended this affirmation for this woman who had a lot of these worries, and saying that they were actually impacting her body as well. So he had her say, there is being created within my system through the normal impulses from the organs of my body, a balance that is normal. So he was basically telling her to tell her body, I am the boss of my body. And even though there were so many other influences to claim herself, to claim her body, and tell her body to have this conversation with her body that that I am going to create balance and some sort of normalcy in my system so that they can function well. So understanding, even though there can be physical reasons, we understand that there's mental reasons that can influence the physical, so we can work with wherever the ease is for us. So if it's hard to say affirmations like that, then I would say do something physical first. Get the massages, or do the castor oil packs, take some salt baths, and you could do that and do the affirmations as well, but to slow down and to recognize where the obstructions are, where the stuckness is. And it could just be that fear of the fear, or the fear of feeling afraid. And so to start from there and realize that your mind can really help you here, but is to take those small steps and start to have a conversation with yourself.
Yeah. And now is a good time for us to be talking about this. And I think it's why we gravitated toward it as a topic for today, because here we are in the midst of summer, when so many of the routines and rhythms that hold our families together are thrown up in the air and coming down in all different ways that can cause fear and stress and a sense of kind of chaos, perhaps, that's happening on a daily level in your family. And then in bigger and bigger ways, we're experiencing sort of chaos and deconstruction and things. There's a feeling community-wise, work-wise, in the organizations around us that we're a part of at a societal level, with a conflict and war. And here we are in the midst of an election season. And just there's just a lot of, there's almost like an unimaginable different reasons that we could be feeling fear, overwhelm, stress, anxiety, and that our children are feeling that, either picking it up from us or feeling it themselves as they move through their worlds as well. So just kind of I think what the Brene Brown excerpt really invites us to consider is, not backing away from those, not trying to cover up feelings of anxiety and fear through distraction or isolation and pulling back, but really allowing ourselves to feel the vulnerability of the uncertainty and overwhelm and chaos. And if that is part of our experience, kind of trusting that the depth of our willingness to engage with those feelings and tease them apart and explore them and really care for ourselves in that place is the path of coming to know who we truly are and what the world is inviting us into becoming in this moment. So really engaging in a deep way with what we may be feeling around fear and anxiety from that perspective, and then giving ourselves also a lot of permission to move slowly with it. And in terms of moving slowly with fear, I really love the work of Kristen Neff, who I'm sure I've mentioned on this podcast before, who does so much research and teaching on self-compassion. And we have worked with combining, because Hugh Lynn Cayce also offers a lot of exercises and structure around how to kind of engage with fear and help yourself move through it as you identify what your specific areas of fear may be related to. So we've combined the work of Kristen Neff and Hugh Lynn to kind of move through a self-compassion exercise or a grace exercise to work with fear that you may be feeling. And I think one of the things that Hugh Lynn is saying, I don't think he creates a hierarchy around, which fears are more real or bigger than others. But one of the main fears that he talks about is kind of this almost existential fear of death that we may have. That's a kind of a root cause at a physical level of why we may be experiencing fear or feeling it. Like, underneath all the worries that we may be having, our overwhelmed sense of not being able to be in control and uncertainty, kind of at the root of that is sometimes a fear of death, or just aware of the impermanence of our lives and our inability to stop, the dying that's kind of happening at every moment as we move through our lives. And so before we move into guiding us through the self-compassion exercise, I wanted to share a story that Hugh Lynn includes in his Faces of Fear book. And it's in the chapter on Are You Afraid of Dying? And so the story goes, when my wife, Sally, so that was my grandmother, when my wife, Sally, became pregnant with Charles Thomas, our first child, her brother, Waller Taylor, a medical doctor, told me that we might expect a difficult birth and recommended a specialist. We obtained the services of a specialist, and I also got a physical reading from Edgar Cayce on Sally's condition. He too indicated a difficult birth, as indeed it was. If my brother-in-law had not been present, we would have lost both Sally and the baby. Then the war years came, and this was World War II, which Hugh Lynn served in, so he was gone. After my return from overseas, Sally and I both wanted another child. I worried more than she did, I think, over the possibility of another difficult birth. Waller said it couldn't be any worse than the first one. As the delivery drew near, I grew more and more concerned. One night I came in from a lecture and went into my wife's room. She was sleeping and a small light was on in the hall. I sat on the edge of the bed and prayed. Suddenly, a light went on in the corner of the room. In it were the animated, smiling faces of my mother and father, who were both dead. In my head, my father spoke to me. Hugh Lynn, you shouldn't worry. It's going to be all right. We are going to show you what love can do. In the light, then the light and their faces moved toward me. As the light touched my body, I lost physical consciousness, but became aware of the presence of both my mother and father, somehow in me. Then there was a pull, and the three of us were sleeping in the body, and the three of us were in the sleeping body of my wife. I became aware of the presence of my wife and of the unborn child, as well as of my father, my mother, and myself. The joy, the ecstasy I experienced was beyond description. Then there was another pull, and we were back in my body. Then a click, and the faces of my parents were again in the corner of the room in light. My mother was smiling. My father spoke again in my head. You see what love can do. It's going to be all right. You are going to have a son. Stop worrying. Then the light went out. I sat there on the bed. Joy, peace, love flooded through me. Sally woke up and turned over and squeezed my hand hard. Before I could say a word, she said, Hugh Lynn, I've had a beautiful dream of your father and mother. It's going to be all right. We are going to have a boy. We did. Sally had an amazingly easy delivery as Greg was born. Greg was my uncle, his second son. So that kind of deep, penetrating connection to love, to a sense of being deeply loved and deeply connected, that there is no boundary either between life and death or the people who we love most deeply, can be this source of Edgar Cayce saying to Hugh Lynn, stop worrying now. Right? Don't let that worry or fear be a destructive force that disconnects you from your ability to deeply trust, to love, to feel love, and to be loving. And that instruction of just stop it, combined with this extrasensory experience of feeling the love and communication with his parents and his wife and his unborn child, the feelings that he names, peace, ecstasy, joy, happiness, these well-being feelings that allow us to move through the mental constructs in our minds around what if, that can break us, keep us away from those feelings. This story kind of demonstrates this in this profound, amazing way. And I think in smaller ways, we can access it through these types of exercise that we're going to go through now, where we're just allowing ourselves to feel the emotions, to feel deeply connected, and to connect to that which we know to be true about ourselves in the world. So I want to move to that now. So the bulk of this exercise comes from Kristen Neff, her self-compassion exercise around just experiencing what it is that we're feeling. But I've combined at the end, and I'll identify when I do so some of the instruction that Hugh Lynn would work with around connecting our ideal, connecting to our ideal. So I use this all the time in working with people with stress and anxiety. When you catch yourself feeling caught in a moment of stress or anxiety, there's a pause that can happen before you take any action, whether it's just an internal dialogue that's running or say or do anything in your life. And you can, and what allows you to pause is the mindfulness of recognizing the moment that you're in. So Kristen Neff uses language around saying, this is a moment of suffering. Here I am feeling pain, feeling fear, feeling discomfort. In the language of Hugh Lynn, when he would describe doing exercises like this, he would bring mindfulness awareness and saying, what is it that we have here? What is it that's going on? With curiosity and neutrality, being able to recognize, here I am feeling discomfort. And you can say, and that can come out as like, this hurts, or this is stress, or ouch, this is painful, right? So there's just the mindfulness, awareness, feelings inside you of being able to feel neutral, compassion, lack of resistance to what is. And then second, naming suffering is a part of life. Suffering is natural. It doesn't mean that I'm doing something wrong. There's not something that needs to be fixed. This is a feeling that's shared by so many people. Literally everyone, if you're in a physical body, has suffered, will suffer. It's a natural part of life. I am not alone. Yeah. Yes, how I'm suffering, the circumstances around it are completely unique and just my own. No one else knows exactly what it feels like to be me in this moment, but we all have struggles in our lives. Not that it minimizes what you're feeling, but that just finding whatever language is available to you that allows you to not feel alone in the suffering that you're feeling, this sense of isolation or not being able to connect with someone else around it can make it more acute. So as you sort of recognize this is common to all humanity, you can put your hands over your heart and can feel the warmth of your hands and the gentle touch of your hands on your chest, or adopt any soothing touch that you've discovered that can feel right for you. You can put your arms across, your hands across on either shoulder so that you can feel it like giving yourself almost a little hug. You can, in your mind's eye, imagine yourself being hugged or held by someone who is very safe and beloved to you, a family member, or you can imagine yourself hugging someone who is beloved to you, your child, or someone in your life who you really feel safe with, and just letting yourself be connected in that way. And then the third step is to send out, to offer like a prayer or a request for, may I be kind to myself. Yeah. Just like touch into that longing to take care of and nurture yourself. So you can ask yourself, what do I need to hear right now to express kindness to myself? Is there a phrase that speaks to you in particular? This is coming directly from Kristen Neff, that would be helpful for you. So the prayers might be something like, may I give myself the compassion that I need? May I learn to accept myself as I am? Is it okay for me to feel the feelings that I feel without resistance, touching into that vulnerability that Brené Brown talks about? May I forgive myself? May I be strong? May I be patient? And you'll know which words are right for you because you'll feel yourself relax. You'll feel a quickening and an ease that arises. And then this fourth part is what comes from Hugh Lynn directly and profoundly in the Edgar Cayce readings that we've talked about so many times here, is touching into your ideal. So touching into, what do I know to be true about myself and the way that I see the world? What am I committed to no matter what? And that will be something like being kind to myself and other people, or who am I when, you can touch into it through asking questions like, who am I when I'm at my best? So remembering, when I don't feel this fear, when I'm not in this stressful situation, who do I know myself to be, right? And what is it that I use as a filter to make hard decisions in my life? So just connecting into, who do I know myself to be regardless of what, like, what is my truth that I want to share and be and live in no matter what in my life, and connecting deeply to that. And then noticing, what does that allow you to let go of? And what does that allow you to bring more deeply into your heart and mind? And just giving yourself the time to trust that whatever arises as you ask yourself these questions is just what you need and just enough for whatever the situation is.
That's so beautiful, Corinne. Thank you for walking us through that.
Absolutely. And if you want to find it again in writing, you can visit Kristen Neff's website. Neff is her last name, and she has other self-compassion exercises. And this one, minus the Hugh Lynn editions that I gave around ideals work. And if you wanted to read Hugh Lynn's book on Faces of Fear, you'll find this material in there as well, if you want to deepen and sort of return to it again and again.
Well, I find it so helpful and hopeful that we can move through difficult times and even move through scary times with this light and this love. And then that excerpt that you read, if we allow ourselves to feel that, then we can actually have joy and peace even when approaching a difficult circumstance. I mean, that's a lot of trust, but that's how expansive love can feel, that
Absolutely.
You can trust that there's a reason for this process. There's whatever we're going through. Maybe it's just asking you to expand into it. It's asking you to be even kinder to yourself. So I love that question that you asked. What do I need to hear right now to express kindness to myself? And that's a great reminder. And sometimes these challenges and difficult situations, that they're asking us to expand in that way, to grow in that way. And so then you can start to see that there's a benefit even in troubling circumstances, that our soul gets to grow even more and bring that growth into our experience, so that even with feeling uncomfortable emotions, we can still feel joy and peace and love.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this conversation, this exploration into the readings and other people's work, into how we can work with these difficult times that may be arising in our lives. So thank you so much, Arlene. I look forward to our next conversation always.
Thank you, Corinne. Me too. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we love to hear from you. So you can always check out the email and send us a message if you'd like.
Yes, creatingcalm@edgarcayce.org. All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye.